Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Nonprofit Podcast, where we are using this platform to meet executive directors and create a platform for fellow executive directors and leaders in nonprofit organizations to mastermind among themselves, because we all know the journey at the top is very lonely. So you need to mastermind with each other so you know that you're not alone. Today, I have a special guest. As a matter of fact, it's the first ever board chair that I've brought into our conversation. We have Angela Fenton, who had served on the board and as the board chair for one of my clients, Pleo, the Parents Lifeline of Eastern Ontario, here. And welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm delighted to be your first chair on the show.
Yes, I understand that you are you have a strong connection with the organization. You have done a lot of work in the community as well. So what brought you to become the chair or like volunteer for this role? Because we all know we only have 24 hours in the day and we're busy with our work and we're busy with taking care of our families. What gives you the idea and motivates you to become a board chair?
Well, that is, you just mentioned taking care of our families. And I actually came to Pleo years ago when my daughter was little, trying to take care of my family and really, really struggling. So when I came to a point where I felt like our family was looked after, I started to look for a way that I could support back an organization that had supported me so beautifully during a time of real stress. So I sought Pleo out and said, please, please, what can I do? And they very generously invited me to the board, and then later as the vice chair and then chair.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Early on, when we discussed about our conversation today, we did talk about and exchange a couple of ideas about managing the board, because you and I both know that being on the board is a majority of the time, being on a nonprofit board is a volunteer position, and it's somehow sometimes very challenging to manage each other and hold each other accountable. So as a board chair, a former board chair on a nonprofit organization, how do you manage to hold other volunteers, other board members accountable?
It's a tricky one, and I'll say it isn't one that I perfected in my time, but I think that the best efforts involve looking for board members who have some kind of passion for the organization. They already feel connected. They already feel a sense of wanting to do for the organization. And then as you go through working with board members, it's trying to find ways of engaging them and making sure that their gifts are being brought forward and opening up the conversations to actually engage them in the conversations. Each person that joins a board comes with their own unique talents and backgrounds and all kinds of skills. And I think part of what the chair can do is access those and help people see them and draw them out to make sure that everybody gets to do their part. And there are times where you just realize that somebody maybe joined the board for a reason that isn't working out, or they thought that they would be able to do more than they can. And there comes a time that you have to have a conversation to say, remember when we first talked and we had this expectation of it's going to be about this much work and these are the things we're going to need you to do. What's happening now? Because it isn't what you had committed to. We're not seeing that anymore. And sometimes that also means having to say farewell to people and finding a new person that can come in and really be active and engaged on the board.
Well, it must not be easy. I mean, being someone who's brought up to be actually a lot of people out there are being brought up as people pleaser. We subconsciously try to avoid having conflicting situation. And when you're a volunteer and volunteer to be a board chair and being forced into the position that you have to have those tough conversations, I could only imagine how challenging it is to handle those conversations.
I think it's the same for any leadership opportunity in any organization. When somebody, volunteer or paid, when somebody has made commitments to an organization, being able to remind them of those commitments and to share with them the agreements that were made at the time of coming together. And just having a really frank conversation around those agreements are not being upheld. It's not necessarily a confrontation, because we are a confrontation avoidant culture. We don't like it.
Yeah.
There are ways of doing it though, and being open about what's being noticed. To be able to say to somebody, I've noticed that, you haven't been participating in the board meetings. And inviting a conversation kind of gently is the starting point in those difficult conversations, to allow the person to express what's on their mind, because there may be a totally valid reason. There might be something that we don't know about. And inviting the conversation is the first part of the conversation to see what's happening on their end.
Absolutely. And you and I both talked about this earlier on as well. One of I really like this in sales. This is something called upfront contract. Like at the beginning, when you first join, you would then sign some sort of an agreement agreeing to certain terms to motivate the volunteer, essentially in this context, to motivate volunteers to stay committed. And we were earlier on, we also mentioned that like one of the best way to keep that person motivated is recruit someone that is connected, deeply connected and committed to the mission that behind the organization.
Yeah, that's right. So in any organization, the more members you can have on the board who have some emotional tie to the organization, whether it's through their own lived experience or the lived experience of a family member, or just their professional skills that they know can be of service to this organization, something. But you have to be upfront about what you're looking for, I think, as the board, when you're recruiting, to say, we are looking for people with this, so that when people are reading these opportunities, they are feeling drawn to it, and understanding what the organization's mission is part of that.
I think a couple podcasts ago, when I was interviewing another guest, and we talked about like starting using fundraising as an example, starting the fundraising activities from the top down. So we, in their organization, they would encourage everyone to donate. You don't have to donate much. You can donate $5, you make a donation, and that is a signal to lead from the top so that it cascades through the entire organization. And so the next step for the fundraising activities would be a lot more effective just because everyone participates. And without that emotional connection between a volunteer and the organization, sometimes it's really just extremely hard. Some volunteers really just don't care as much. Yeah.
It's right. And I think when you're bringing people into the board, you talked earlier about kind of setting the expectations, those agreements. Sometimes those agreements involve something like that. Part of what we expect of you as a board member is that you're going to make donations of, sometimes organizations actually tell them a minimum of this much money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know that that's the best way to do it, but I know some do. To make it clear that you're joining and you're not just bringing your skills and your time, you're also bringing your pocketbook. Is one way of doing that too. But it really is about being upfront at the beginning of what we need from you, and the person saying, yeah, I got it, and hopefully keeping up their end of the bargain.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So now I know that you just left the Pleo board. So, but before you leave, you had a 1-year transition plan, which to me is amazing, because to have that type of foresight to make sure that you have someone behind you to take over the work that you've been doing so successfully through your tenure as the board chair at Pleo's board. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about this whole succession planning and why and how, what got you started thinking about it.
Well, to be honest, it didn't come to me first from the position of chair. It came to me when suddenly the organization needed to find a new executive director, and there hadn't been really strong succession planning. So we were in a position of scrambling and trying to fill a role that the board itself didn't know how to really fulfill. So even bringing in a new person who's fantastic, picked up the reins and rode with it, we weren't able to give a lot of guidance in the early days because we were not connected enough at that time. There had been no succession planning within the organization. So once we had that handled and somebody really strong in chair, then I started thinking about it from the board perspective too, and thinking, okay, but we can't have the same thing happen. I can't just drop off the face of the earth and have no kind of time to pass on or to, be open with my successor. So when I started to decide, okay, I think when my term is done, I'm going to move on and do other things, I was open with both the executive director and the vice chair at the same time to say, here's my intention. We have a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we continued to have the three of us had meetings every week so that by the time I was moving on, the vice chair was able to step in as the chair and had been a part of all the discussions for the past over a year, I think.
Wow, that's awesome. I think as owner of two businesses myself, I think it isn't. I don't believe that my team members would be with me forever. But the best way for departure per se is that foresight that hey, I have this intention, those communication, having those communication ahead of time, and helping each other prepare for each other's like next step in their career. It's so important and so helpful. And this is leaving on the best term possible, essentially.
Well, and that's the whole goal. So when speaking to that executive director as well, I wanted to be open with her and say, hey, what are your dreams? Like, I hope that she will stay with that organization forever because she's so great. But I know that she has skills to offer to other organizations at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important, I think, for the board to be really connected to the executive director and their ambitions and goals, to have the really, I think just this year we embedded that conversation into the performance review to say, hey, let's just make sure we formally have space in the agenda to talk about what your hopes and dreams are, because that can help shape the professional development budget that we have allocated for that.
Mm-hmm.
It can help us with succession planning as well. If we know, okay, we have another year or another 2 years, then the board can start thinking and planning, and we can start knowing about who's in the organization that might be a potential, who else is in the community that might be a potential, and we're not left high and dry with, panic. We're
Yeah.
able to actually really be intentional and make sure that the organization continues to thrive through the transition.
I mean, it takes a lot of like having this foresight and practicing, putting it into practice. Um, I think it requires a lot of trust
Mm.
and a lot of relationship building between the board chair as well as the executive director, or the board and the executive director. So, tell us a little bit from your experience how you build those relationships, because it sounds like you, Michelle, had a great, fantastic working relationship at Pleo.
And we still do. I've left the organization, but not really. I'll always be
Yeah.
connected. Um, I yeah, I mean that's a human question. How do you build relationships? We all do them differently. And I think it was really great when Michelle joined for us to, I was also new, that's right at the same time that I became the chair, to
Yeah.
have an open and vulnerable conversation with one another to say, okay, well, this is interesting. We've landed in an interesting time and
Mm-hmm.
let's put our heads together and figure this out.
Yeah.
Uh, and on my end, one of the things that I think she has done exceptionally well is to teach the board about the nonprofit world. Because the
Mm.
board, one of our members had experience working in the nonprofit sector, but the rest of us are not. So there are many conversations that she was able to share with us. Okay, yes, that is a great idea if this were a normal corporation. This
Mm.
is how we're doing things in the nonprofit world, and the board has to listen and learn, and vice versa. There's communication sharing on both sides.
Yeah.
But I think in order to build a relationship, the board has to be willing to listen to the expertise of the person they've entrusted in the role,
Mhm.
and have the wisdom to know when there's time to guide and when there's time to be guided.
Mm. That's a really awesome insight. I also, from our earlier conversation, you also mentioned that there is PD budget being allocated. From my work with a few nonprofit organizations, I also recognize that a lot of the time they do have some sort of PD being approved for the staff member. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because in times when it's tight, the budget is tight, the money is tight. Like today, in today's environment, government's talking about not having as much spending. So I guess how do you even, not even, but how do you, how as a board, you're worrying about the financial sustainability of the organization, but you also want to make sure you can take care of the development of the executive director. Like it's, how do you even come to an amount that you would allocate to PD? How do you know that it is a good investment?
So I'm a professional development coach in my day job. So I know the value of developing a human and a leader. So it's easy for me. It's not easy for every board because they might not have that background, but from experience, understanding that if we invest $2,000 in this leader's professional development, for example, and have a discussion with them about how they want to use that money, what they think is a fair amount, I think is a good starting point to say, what are your ambitions? What do you want to do to develop yourself? If we find some money for you, what would you want to use it for? To explore how that will grow them as a leader and what that then will do for the organization. Because you have the leaders in the nonprofit space are so busy. They're so they have all this responsibility on their shoulders, all these decisions to make. They're carrying the weight of the organization. To give them the gift of a bit of space and a bit of time and a bit of money to go and think and grow is going to do the company nothing but good. So it's not a sell for me. I didn't have to be sold on approving that budget for RED. That was I think I might have been the one to pitch it. Because you have to invest in leaders and you have to give them space to think and plan. So that was a no-brainer for me to give that to that leader. The other part of you were talking about funding and in tight times. The other thing that has come up also is trying to be thoughtful about fundraising itself and knowing that we as people, we can do what we can do. The volunteers on the board are all volunteers. So many of them have full-time jobs on the side, or full-time jobs. This is the side gig. And the executive director is carrying everything. So they don't necessarily have time to think or plan or execute massive fundraising initiatives. So when it's possible, I think that boards really should consider hiring fractional fundraisers, even though the money might be tight. And we did that with this organization. We knew we're going to have to use some reserves in order to afford this person as a part-time person to come and help. But the long-term forecast is so positive that we can't really afford not to. And in doing it, we're also creating space for the executive director to think bigger picture, to strategize more and get out of some of the doing and into some of the more of the planning and the future strategy.
That is such a great point. Like we discussed before, Altus, my business, Altus Financial Management, we help nonprofit to manage their finances. And what we see a lot of the time is that over-reliance on government funding. And we know that this is the time that when there is contraction. And recently over the last few months, I've been talking to one of our clients and they're having such a hard time and they're thinking of essentially cutting their team members' hours. And then they also dabbling on fundraising activities as well. But the problem is that it's hard to convince a board that is not as aligned and forefront or having that foresight to understand the investment in a fundraiser will give you the ROI in the traditional business sense, the return on investment. It's just so hard to have that conversation because you're looking at the bank accounts and there's only so much money left. And if we invest in the part-time fundraiser, what's going to happen is that I'm going to deplete the money. What if this time doesn't work? And so in their mind, they're having such a hard time wrapping that idea around.
Yeah. And I think a lot of board members have the business mindset. So ROI is a term that most will understand and most will go to. If we do go into the reserves, how long will it take us to get the money back? You know, like, is it a 2-year return or is it 5 years? How long is it going to take? So I think when an executive director is in that position where they know that's the thing to do, is to hire somebody to help with the fundraising, it's worth spending some time with their finance partner to understand the financial story, because EDs their skills cover so many topics.
100%.
And to have somebody give them the financial, like narrow it down to the financial story, so that they can tell both the emotional story and the future of the business story and a really clear financial story, will help them sell it to the board, it'll help them explain it in a way that the board will find more challenging to refuse than to struggle with, or than to accept, I guess. So storytelling is a skill, and being able to explain it, but having that additional financial picture to help the board come along would be really valuable.
You know what? That's so valuable. And I really appreciate the openness of the board that you are and you were a part of. It's not every day that you come across a board so supportive and understanding as well. And at our event, Otis annual event at the Otis Nonprofit Exchange event, I remember one panelist mentioned that yes, the nonprofit label is really just a CRA label, a tax label. Nonprofits should always run their business as if it is for profit, but except it is for profit, but to run it in a sense that is sustainable, financially sustainable. So then you can continue to exist to achieve your goal. If you don't have money, there is no one to push your agenda forward as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that topic, that weight of like the financial side of it, is a huge one for EDs. And it's very heavy. It's a very heavy burden, because to fail at that means the organization is going to suffer, right? If either staff will have to be laid off, or the program will have to be cut, or the worst case, the organization may fold. So it's a humongous weight on their shoulders. And I was just talking to a client about this the other day in the a CEO in the nonprofit space who's worried also about his own health because of that weight. You know, how long can I sustain this up and down pressure of, yay, we've got money, oh God, we have no money, oh yay, we've got money, oh God, we have no money. And what it's doing to leaders across the sector it risks being quite damaging. So finding any possibility to kind of stabilize that funding model and to give them the longer term sustainability would be really valuable, not just for the here and now, but for themselves in the future as well.
100%. I mean, our mission is to hopefully to work with nonprofit organizations to help them raise another $50 million additional revenues that are outside of what they currently do. That is a challenge, because it's hard to convince. It may not be hard to convince a nonprofit that, hey, this is what you need. But when it comes down to allocating human resources or the board buy-in to do all that, it's challenging.
Yeah. And I think that's where the storytelling can come in, to be able to paint the full picture for the board of, here's the risk if we do it, and here's the risk if we don't do it. And having the treasurer part of that conversation too. I think it was one of RED's strategic masterminds was to bring our finance person from Otis and our treasurer into the, like, help me tell the story. What's the picture that I'm trying to paint? So that when she came to the board, already the two money people were behind it. It made it a much easier decision.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's fantastic. That's our dream client as well. Listen to us and then also work with us. And Well, Angela, I've taken so much of your time today, and I really appreciate all the board chair insight that you've shared, and how you work with Pleo, the whole operational side of team. I think that's very, very eye-opening for anyone who wants to be part of your inner circle. I know that you have an inner circle that talk to each other, that a platform that you've created to allow executive director to talk to each other. For anyone who is interested in learning a little bit more, how do they get in touch with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn, Angela Fenton, and they'll see ACC after my name. That's my accreditation with the International Coaching Federation.
Awesome.
Or they can email me at angela.fenton.coaching@gmail.ca.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Cherry.
As we wrap up, I want to share a bit more about what we do at Otis Financial Solutions. For the past 18 years, Otis Financial Solutions has been dedicated to enhancing the financial management and strategic planning capabilities of hundreds of associations and nonprofits across Canada. Our extensive experience has enabled us to deliver tailored financial solutions that drive growth and enhance sustainability for nonprofits and associations. If you are interested in learning more about how Otis Financial Solutions can support your organization, I would love to offer you a no obligation 20-minute call. Let's discuss your unique challenges and explore how we would be able to help you achieve your goals.